Welcome everyone to the National Brain Tumor Society's webinar titled Advocacy 101, Your Story Matters. We designed this webinar with the intention of breaking down what it means when someone talks about public policy advocacy. NBTS works with volunteers all over the country to educate our elected officials so they can be aware of how their decisions have an impact on the brain tumor community. During this webinar, we'll talk about the basics of public policy advocacy and why your stories and experiences are an integral part of achieving our goals. My name is Casey Troy, and I am the Research and Advocacy Manager here at National Brain Tumor Society. I am joined by fellow NBTS staff, including Lisa Peabody, our Public Policy Associate, who you'll meet in a couple of minutes, Lainey Titus-Samant, former Associate Director of Public Policy and current Jack of all trades, as well as the co-state lead advocate for Massachusetts, Samantha Couillard, the Senior Administrative Assistant to the CEO, and Stephen LaFond, our Digital Communications and Marketing Manager, as well as two of our amazing volunteer state lead advocates, Kelly DeBurge from Maine and Patty Urias from Arizona. A couple housekeeping items before we begin. To minimize any background noise, all participants will be muted for the duration of the webinar. We do welcome questions though, so please ask your questions throughout the webinar by using the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please send your questions directly to Lainey using chat. We'll set aside some time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions. Lainey is going to send, oh, she just did. She sent a welcome chat, so you'll know where to find her. Feel free to chat her anytime if you have any issues. And if your question isn't answered during this webinar, please email us at advocacy@braintumor.org anytime. Finally, we are recording this webinar and we'll make it available online, and we'll also send a follow-up email to all participants with a link to the video once it's uploaded. Okay, so I think that covers our administrative pieces, so let's dive in. What is public policy advocacy? When we talk about public policies, we're talking about local, state, and federal rules that are intended to help and serve all members of the community, be it a local government, a specific state, or the whole country. These can be rights, responsibilities, and investments made through the government, such as the right to vote for all citizens over the age of 18, the responsibility to serve as a juror, and government investment in education and research. The National Brain Tumor Society focuses on federal policies that affect the brain tumor community in the United States as a whole. Public policy advocacy consists of individual or group activities that have a goal of making change to public policy. Some well-known public policy advocacy movements include the suffrage movement, when people all over the country join together to educate the public and lobby their members of Congress to enfranchise women, which they achieved through the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, giving women the right to vote. Another more recent example of public policy advocacy is the disability rights movement and the successful passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, which provided comprehensive civil rights to people with disabilities and the continued advocacy toward empowerment of Americans with disabilities. These advocacy efforts have utilized education of the public and members of Congress through individual and group outreach, peaceful protests and marches, the circulation of petitions, meeting with elected officials, etc., and have led to positive changes and results for the communities at the center of the movements, because individuals who are passionate about these causes have joined together and continue to show up time after time to make these changes happen. So now that we've gone over public policies and public policy advocacy in general, we would like to discuss more specifically what brain tumor public policy advocacy is and the activities we utilize in our advocacy program. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the National Brain Tumor Society focuses on federal policies that affect the brain tumor community in the US. We initiate numerous types of activities and work with volunteers across the country with the goal of making positive changes to the public policies that affect this community. The rest of our training today will focus on public policy advocacy and what that means as it relates to the National Brain Tumor Society's mission of finding better treatments and ultimately a cure for brain tumors by funding innovative research and by improving the public policies that relate to medical research and matters of quality of life. I would like to now introduce my colleague, Lisa Peabody, who is the Public Policy Associate here at National Brain Tumor Society.
Thank you, Casey. It's really nice to be here. My name is Lisa, and I work outside of Washington, D.C. I work in connection with you as the advocate. So once you've connected and you've reached out to your member and spoken with them, I swoop in and do a follow-up meeting here in D.C. So what can Congress do for the brain tumor community? What can Congress do for patients, for caregivers, for survivors? How can the federal government help us? And what's on our policy agenda? Advocacy is vital. It's vital to policy change. When you as a survivor participate in a clinical trial, you're hoping that it's safe. And so the government creates rules and laws through the FDA to make sure that you're safe. And we, as the brain tumor community, as the National Brain Tumor Society, we follow those rules to keep you safe. We also focus on making sure that research is directed towards brain tumor research. And we know that can happen because a member or an office is connected and feels your passion for brain tumors. Could change to the next slide. The federal government, if you didn't know this, is the largest funder of research in the country. It's huge. It has a huge research budget. And we need to make sure as the Brain Tumor Society and as a cancer community that the money that they're researching is going to cancer and specifically to brain tumors. And so your connection and your meeting with members and telling your story, it creates a buzz and it creates awareness so that when those budget items come up, your member is thinking about you and thinking about your story and thinking about the brain tumor community. And we've here's a specific example where the advocacy changed the direction of funding, which is really, really incredible. You know that people make decisions based on their emotions. And so if you've connected with an office, that person is going to be thinking about that when they're making decisions. So the government has this big budget, as we said, and within that budget, they allocate, it's called appropriate, different amounts of funding for different programs. And one of those programs is the Department of Defense. That's our military budget called the DoD. And within that budget, there's a medical research appropriation. And that has been directed mostly to handle diseases that servicemen and their families particularly encounter, like PTSD or prosthetic research. But also it has a cancer appropriation because members of service and their families get cancer. And within that appropriation for cancer is a line item for pediatric brain tumor research. This is really, really incredible that the government has allocated this money. So researchers and scientists can apply to get money from the government. You can be outside of the military or in the military and receive grant funding for your project to do research on pediatric brain tumors. That line item was in the budget starting in 2009, and all of a sudden in 2014, it disappeared. And so we learned that Congressman Bill Young, who had been requesting that line item, had passed away, and so no one spoke up for it. And that is when we enlisted the help of our fantastic advocates that were already part of our program. And these people, advocates emailed, and they made phone calls. They had meetings in their district. They responded to our action alerts. They wrote letters. And so we engaged all of you to let your member know that it is a priority and that it is important to them and important to their constituents that pediatric brain tumors be a part of this program. So it was really incredible. And after losing that funding in 2014, with your help, Congress re-added that for 2015. So we're so grateful. And we had historic levels of advocacy participation for that event. It just shows in the scheme of things how important your voice is to Congress. Remember that you vote for this legislator, and they always want to know what are your priorities, what's important to you. And that's exactly what you did as an advocacy community. So here we are in working on the budget right now. So this is budget time in Capitol Hill, and we are expanding on this program. It's been really a super successful program, and we are now hoping that our advocates are going to continue speaking to their members and responding to action alerts and sending letters so that we can add a second category of research. So we're hoping that we'll have pediatric brain tumors along with adult brain tumors. The National Brain Tumor Society also asked for a $10 million increase. So we're hoping to get more money with your help. And if you remember from high school government, first you have the House of Representatives that works on a budget, and then the Senate has to also approve the budget until it finally goes to the president. And we're in great shape because we have already gotten approval from the House of Representatives. So this language is included in this bill, and we're hoping to have this $10 million increase. So thanks to so much work from so many really dedicated and active advocates, we've been able to make this progress. In fact, I'd like to talk about one of them today. Next, we will hear from Kelly. And Kelly is, she's from Maine, and she's our state lead there. She really does fantastic work. So Kelly, take it away.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute it. So can everyone hear me?
Yes, thanks, Kelly.
Okay. So like Lisa said, I'm Kelly. I'm the Maine State Lead Advocate from Maine. And the connection I have with brain tumors is that I lost my dad 10 years ago to a brain tumor. 4 years ago, I decided that I wanted to start raising money for research. So I live in a very small community, but I started a 5K in my community. This coming year will be the 4th year that I've held it. So the past 3 years, I've raised $25,000 in Maine. So after my first year, after the 5K, I was looking for an organization who I would be donating my money to for brain cancer research. And that's when I found the National Brain Tumor Society. So after then, I started getting letters in the mail from MBTS, and one of them was an invitation to Capitol Hill for Head to the Hill in May. So after that, I thought that my husband and I would go and see what that was about, because we were raising funding and awareness and advocating in Maine, but we wanted to bigger and better ourselves. So our first year at Capitol Hill, we were actually the only 2 advocates from Maine. So it was very scary for us, since neither of us had any experience with politics or anything related to that. But the first day, MBTS had spent its a lengthy day on what we should be saying and how we should be at Capitol Hill with our senators. So we had gone and met with all of our senators and said the asks for the research and the funding that we were educated on the previous day. And it was definitely the most scariest but exciting experience of my life. You have these asks that you have to present to them, and then in the same time telling your story, which you're prepared to have a very short time with your senators because they are so busy. They have so many stories, so many asks to listen to. Their job is to try to hear as many important information throughout the day down there. So it does feel very pressuring, but when we went to all of our senators, sharing your story and finding the connection that the senators also might have with brain cancer or with cancer is how they remember you and how they remember the act that you want them to sign. Without going down there and without educating them or without showing your face down there and sharing your story, oftentimes those asks will be left behind because they didn't hear about it, they didn't remember it, they have so many other things to do. But with my senators, one of them actually had a best friend pass away from a brain tumor. So she was very connected and she was all on board with everything that I wanted her to ask, to sign. And other ones that might not have had such a strong connection, me sharing my story. And of course, everyone that's going down there that's advocating, it is very important to every single person. Every single person, their story is powerful and it's important. And everyone shows that through going down there. So making that connection with the senators is very important. So after the last year, we went back again, which we'll continue to keep going back because, like I said, it is the most powerful and exciting experience. And going down is, like this is, your story matters, and sharing why you make the trip to DC and how brain tumors have impacted you is important. And they will see that through your story.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's great to hear about your experiences as an advocate. This is Casey again. I know we're all looking forward to Head to the Hill and are continuing to work hard for the brain tumor community every day. And I want to make sure everybody on the phone knows that means advocate as little or as much as your life allows. So you can participate in any level, simply sharing information on social media or responding to those action alerts, those emails that we send asking you to take some sort of action, which is usually writing an email to your members of Congress or making a phone call, or if you have more time and desire, you can meet with your representatives in your local district, especially during August recess, but we try to schedule meetings throughout the year. And of course, Head to the Hill, as Patty and Kelly both talked about. That is our signature advocacy event. And I guess on a personal note, the first time I attended, I think it was 2013, I guess, and I was working in mostly in the research department at that time, doing grants management. And the first time I attended Head to the Hill, and was able to advocate for these incredibly important public policies and meet fellow members of the brain tumor community, I knew I had to be a part of this movement, and have kind of wormed my way into the advocacy world ever since. And you don't, if you're not able to make it to Head to the Hill, not to worry. We'll find ways to involve you as much as you'd like to be involved throughout the year. So keep that in mind, and let us know. You can contact us anytime. The email advocacy@braintumor.org goes to the department, and we're happy to talk with you about any questions you may have, or any interest you may have in joining at any level. So now we are moving on to the Q&A session. So we'd like to answer any questions that have been submitted throughout the webinar. Lainey, are there any particularly popular, frequently asked questions to share?
just have one comment so far, and that was a great reminder from one of our advocates, Wendy, who is making the note that if our member of Congress isn't available when we're at Head to the Hill, it's okay to advocate to staff, and staff are just as important because they help make those decisions and help educate the members of Congress. So I think that's the same, whether it's in DC or whether you're making a phone call. If it's staff, then it's okay to talk to them and they can be helpful. Another question we just have is, what do I do if I live in DC? So does someone want to answer that, or do you want me to go ahead and answer, Casey?
Go for it, Lainey.
So the question is, if you live in DC already, that's great, because that means you have a few more options for advocating over the course of the year. So you could join us for Head to the Hill, and we'll have meetings with you, and you can meet with if you're actually living in the city, you would meet with your one representative, but you're also welcome. And what we've had other advocates do that live in the city is to go around with other groups, whether you a different state or whether you go with Maryland or Virginia, you could do that as well to take part in a few more meetings. But what we can also do is let you know if you reach out to advocacy@braintumor.org, then you can let us know if you'd like to take part in other meetings throughout the year since you're local to the Capitol. And then you can always advocate through action alerts such as emails to your members of Congress and sharing things on social media.
Lainey, can I add to that? This is Lisa Peabody. If you live in DC, even though your member isn't a voting member, she is also a voice. And so having her on her side, she absolutely wants to know what you're thinking and wants to know your priorities. So don't put that as less important, because she's equally important. And the second piece that Lainey want to reiterate is that I often need volunteers and workers who are local to the Capitol for events that I can't participate in. And I'm so grateful. I'd love to have you participate in those types of events.
And Casey, another question, I think there's a couple of them that we can combine here, is, are you able to meet with senators as well as representatives? And how much time do you spend with the representatives when you meet with them? So do you want to take that, Casey?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Lainey. We will schedule meetings at Head to the Hill with both your senators as well as your representative. And as Lainey mentioned, for folks in DC, but also, if there are multiple people in the state, we might ask you to go with your other members in your state, other volunteers in your state, to go to their meetings with their representatives as well. So you can kind of make a group effort. So we will absolutely schedule meetings with senators and representatives. And how much time do you spend with the representatives when you meet them? It varies. It depends on how much time is available with the representative or senator or their staff. I would say an average is probably 15 to 20 minutes. But it really depends. Like Kelly said, she was able to speak with her member for 45 minutes. So we go in planning to not have a ton of time, but wherever the conversation leads us, it's usually enough. It's enough time to tell your story, get your message across, and start that relationship.
And I'd like to add to that as well. So Casey and Lainey were talking mostly about the Head to the Hill meetings, but when you do an in-district meeting and the members usually a little more relaxed in-district, and that's hopefully near where you live, and you often can get a much more time when you do the in-district meeting. So if you're thinking, oh, I never could get to DC, I couldn't manage that, you can make just as large an impact, or maybe even a greater impact, by advocating in your state and locally.
That's a great point, Lisa. And we can help if you want company while you do that. We can help organize those meetings and help recruit other advocates to join you.
And give you background information so that you're feeling confident and kind of guide you through it.
Right. We'll absolutely prepare you for any meeting that you go to advocate for the National Brain Tumor Society.
And Casey, that sort of leads to a couple of other questions we've had. One was around whether there's a template for emailing and sending letters or requests to our members of Congress. And the other is, if I'm not able to attend Head to the Hill, how do I find out about other options and connecting with people in my state? So what I'll do is I'll send to the whole group a link to our website through the chat. But if you want to explain that a little bit more while I send the link, that would be great.
Thanks, Lainey. Yeah, so if to connect with other people in your state, a lot of our states and regions have Facebook pages through National Brain Tumor Society, so I feel like that's a great way to connect with members of your state. We also have state lead advocates, so volunteers who are highly engaged in a handful of states throughout the country. So I think the best first step, if you want to connect with advocates in your state, is to maybe shoot us an email or give me a call. And if we do have a state lead advocate, I can connect you with that person. Or if we have an event in your state, that's a great way to connect. Or if not, we definitely have contacts throughout the states. And so I'd be happy to kind of set up information, set up a relationship between you and other advocates so you can get to know and join with other brain tumor advocates in your state. Eleni just linked to the braintumor.org/advocate for change webpage, where after we send action alerts, we upload links onto this page that include templates for sending letters. So if you click on that link, even in the chat, it'll open up that web page, and you can see it's really simple. You input your name and address so they know which senators and representatives to contact. And then the next page takes you to a letter that we've included the pertinent information on. So, bill numbers, we've worded it in a way that it will be noted that you're emailing about this specific topic. And then there's an area for you to personalize the letter. So to enter your story, tell them why it's important to you, and then hit send it. It goes to your representative and senators, so they can hear your voice that way. I'm seeing another question, Lainey. Sorry, can I just answer it? Is it appropriate to follow up after our meetings in writing or calls? When you're asking great questions, it is encouraged to follow up after meetings in writing or calls throughout the year. Really. So a meeting is a first step in your building of your relationship as a brain tumor advocate and an expert of your experience within the brain tumor community. So we want you to continue to have contact throughout the year with your representatives to maintain that kind of constant, not too constant, an appropriate amount of reaching out, so you stay on their mind. So and continue to build a positive relationship. So when you do reach out with an ask to co-sponsor a bill, for example, that they recognize that you're a trusted member of the community who can speak to what's important to you and to the brain tumor community, and can take that next step quickly.
Those are great questions, everyone. Appreciate those thoughts.
They really are. Any last minute questions through chat? We can keep it open for a minute. Type quickly. Any advice for returning Head to the Hillers? That's a good question. We're really going to focus on your story this year. We do every year, but we're going to make sure that we're talking about our personal stories. So I think kind of maybe wrapping your head around what your story might look like that you can speak to your members of Congress is a good idea. Anybody else, Lisa or Lainey, do you have any advice for returning Head to the Hillers?
I guess my advice would be just to remember how you felt on your first time and go reach out to some of the new folks who are there and help them to feel comfortable and reassure them and just be a friendly face and someone else they can connect with. Because I think when someone's new, that, we know that we'll share with them all of the information we'll need to know, but it's most helpful if they can feel reassured and made comfortable by the returning our veteran Head to the Hill advocates.
Yeah, that's great. We could definitely use chaperones and guides. I'm also thinking if you haven't reached out to your office since last year's Head to the Hill, you can let them know you're coming. You can write them twice. Do you know our Head to the Hill, our lobby days? We're so excited. And then next month you can write them again. I'm coming. I can't wait to see you. With something really small and simple and quick, and that just keeps your voice in the background.
Those are great points, Lisa and Lainey. And finally, I guess this is not really advice, but Zach, you're writing what I'm thinking. I'll try to bring a friend or two. If you, if you're returning, I'm assuming that means you thought Head to the Hill was a worthwhile event, like we here at NBTS do. Feel free to recruit friends and family members from your state or across the U.S. Stephen has created a map that's on our Facebook event for Head to the Hill that shows what states have advocates coming from those states and which states we don't have anybody signed up yet. So we'd love to fill that map. So if you can recruit people you think this would be a worthwhile event for, and I personally think it's worthwhile for anyone connected to a brain tumor, please feel free to invite them or connect them with us if they have more questions than you feel comfortable asking.
And I think you can invite people who haven't actually had a personal experience with brain tumors. Sometimes people bring their friend who might not have had a brain tumor or been a caregiver, but they're your friend and they want to be there to support you. So I think it's anyone who wants to speak out for any experience at all with brain tumors.
Awesome. And Lainey just linked to our Facebook page for Head to the Hill where we post and there's a discussion within the group of advocates who are attending also. So feel free to ask any questions there or say, hey, I'm coming from such and such location. Is anybody else coming from this state and do you want to connect? So it's a great place to kind of start a conversation before you actually get to Head to the Hill. Okay, and finally, there is how can I get a replay of this webinar? We will email to all participants a link to this recorded webinar once we get it uploaded. And we'll also include in that any pertinent links that we discussed today. We'll send Head to the Hill registration information, how to sign up to become an advocate, and that sort of stuff. So if that is it, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with us. I hope you enjoyed the webinar and are feeling comfortable with public policy advocacy. If you did have any questions that didn't get answered, please feel free to email us at advocacy@braintumor.org. Or if you're interested and want to know more, we're here all the time, happy to help. So sign up to become an advocate today by visiting braintumor.org and clicking on Advocate for Change. Thank you.